Nobody ever forgot that stormy dawn at Willow Creek. Even now, the memory lingers in the mist that creeps along the banks when thunderheads roll over the horizon. The rain fell in heavy sheets, streaking the windows of the black SUV parked just shy of the river's edge, its headlights flickering like pale eyes in the gloom. Inside the car, 5-year-old Emily Carter pressed her faded teddy bear to her chest so tightly the old fabric creaked. She wore a pink dress, the kind with frills she'd once loved, but now it only made her feel small and out of place. The wheelchair beneath her was cold against her legs, the only thing she could truly feel after the accident. Her father, Richard Carter, sat behind the wheel, jaw clenched, hands white-knuckled, eyes darting to the water that surged and boiled just a few yards away. Emily's heart pounded like the thunder. Each time her father turned, his movements were sharper, more frantic. "Hold still, Emily." His voice cracked with impatience, colder than the wind rattling through the trees. She didn't dare speak, only nodded, and hugged her bear closer. "Don't let go," she whispered, her lips brushing the bear's ear, voice trembling so softly that not even the storm seemed to hear. Outside, tied to a crooked fence post, stood Thunder, a powerful brown horse with a wild black mane, nostrils flaring at the scent of the river and the panic in the air. He stamped, sensing something was wrong. Lightning flashed, painting the world in harsh, silvery blue. Emily stared at the horse, her only friend in this lonely place, and felt a flicker of hope. Thunder met her gaze, wide-eyed, and pulled against the rope that held him, muscles bunched with tension. Richard flung open the SUV's door. "Let's go." His voice was a growl now. The wind lashed at Emily's hair, and she whimpered, shrinking into the seat. He yanked her out with a strength that made her cry out. The wheels of her chair bounced along the muddy path as Richard pushed her down to the dock, a battered wooden boardwalk that creaked and swayed under his weight. The river was high and furious, frothing white against jagged rocks. Even in her panic, Emily saw her father's eyes. No tears, just cold calculation. He untied a small rowboat, dragging it into the churning water. "No, Daddy. Please." Emily's voice was barely audible, stolen away by the wind and the crashing of the river. Richard ignored her. With rough hands, he lifted her, bear and all, into the boat, shoving her wheelchair beside her. She clung to the gunwales as he jumped in after, grabbing the oars and pushing away from the safety of the shore. For a moment, Emily imagined this was a nightmare. Surely her father would turn the boat around, take her home, and say it was all a mistake. But as they reached the center of the river, Richard's breathing grew harsher. He looked at her, not as a daughter, but as a burden. "You ruined everything," he muttered, not to her, but to the storm, to the past, to whoever he blamed for his life falling apart. The boat rocked violently as he stood. Emily tried to reach for him. "Daddy!" Her voice cracked. He didn't look at her. Instead, with one swift, horrifying motion, he pushed her, wheelchair and all, over the side. She hit the water so fast she couldn't even scream. The cold slammed into her, tearing the bear from her arms. She flailed, lungs burning, the wheelchair sinking quickly, dragging her down. Overhead, thunder cracked. For one terrible moment, Emily saw her father's silhouette against the lightning. Then nothing but darkness and the roaring of the water in her ears. Back on the shore, Thunder screamed, a piercing, furious cry that echoed through the valley. He reared up, snapping the rope that held him, hooves pounding against the earth. He saw Richard leap from the boat and run for the trees, never looking back. The world was chaos. Rain, wind, a small girl fighting for her life, and a horse driven by something deeper than fear. Thunder plunged into the river, powerful muscles cutting through the current. He swam with everything he had, the water pulling at his legs, the current threatening to drag him under. But he pushed on, guided by the image of Emily's small face and the terror in her eyes. The SUV's headlights faded into the storm, but Thunder kept going, never losing sight of the spot where the girl disappeared. Beneath the surface, Emily clung to her bear as best she could, bubbles streaming from her lips. The world was silent, but for the beating of her heart and the faint sound of Thunder's desperate whinny. Just as her arms grew weak and the river began to claim her, something brushed against her hand. A mane, slick and tangled, but strong. Thunder's nose nudged her gently, as if telling her to hold on. That was the last thing Emily remembered before the world went black, and the river swallowed the sounds of the night. On the shore, Thunder struggled to haul himself out of the water, collapsing beside Emily's motionless form. Rain battered them both, but in that wild, stormy dawn, something had changed. Two souls, battered and broken, clung together on the muddy bank, and the world would never be the same. And as the storm raged, Richard Carter disappeared into the trees, his secrets swallowed by the night. But Thunder and Emily, lost, battered but alive, remained. Somewhere a new story was just beginning. The world beneath the river was nothing like the world above. Down here, everything was cold, silent, and unforgiving. Emily tumbled through the current, her small hands desperately grasping for anything solid. Her faded teddy bear slipped from her grasp, spinning out of reach as the water dragged her downward. The river's roar was muffled by the water pressing in on her ears, every sound warped and distant, every movement a fight against the unstoppable strength of the current. Emily tried to scream, but only bubbles escaped her lips, rising uselessly toward the light. Her lungs burned. Her mind flashed with memories. Her mother's gentle face, the softness of her bed, Thunder's steady gaze, all slipping away with each second. Fear consumed her, sharp and paralyzing, but she refused to let go of hope. "Don't let go," she repeated silently, the words a promise in the darkness. Somewhere above, Thunder's powerful form cut through the river like an arrow, his mane whipping in the current. Driven by instinct and love, he fought the water's pull, kicking hard against the weight trying to drag him down. Each stroke was a battle, hooves thrashing, nostrils flaring, eyes wild with determination. He had never faced a river like this, but the thought of Emily alone and lost pushed him on. Just as Emily's strength failed, her tiny hand brushed against something solid and warm. Thunder's mane, thick, tangled, and strong, floated past her fingers. With the last ounce of willpower, Emily grabbed hold, entwining her fingers in the hair. Thunder felt her grip and turned, nudging her upward, fighting to keep her head above water. The current slammed against them, but Thunder's resolve was unbreakable. Together, they broke the surface. Emily gasped, the air sharp and sweet in her lungs. Rain still hammered down, thunder rolling across the sky. Thunder kicked with everything he had, guiding Emily toward the muddy bank. Inch by inch, they inched closer, battered by waves and debris. Emily coughed, choking on river water, but she held on, refusing to let the river win. When at last they reached the shore, Thunder heaved himself up onto the mud, his massive body shaking with exhaustion. Emily clung to his mane, her eyes wide with shock and terror. For a moment both lay there. Two survivors, broken and breathless, bound by a miracle. The river had tried to take them, but together they'd held on. Thunder lowered his head, pressing his nose gently to Emily's trembling hand. She could feel the warmth of his breath, the steady thump of his heart. a lifeline in the chaos. Emily wrapped her arms around his neck, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't speak. Her voice was lost somewhere in the current, but her gratitude was written in every trembling gesture. The storm began to pass, rain easing to a gentle drizzle. The world was quieter now, the river no longer a beast but a tired animal, its fury spent. Emily lay in the mud, her dress clinging to her skin, her hair plastered to her cheeks. Thunder collapsed beside her, eyes half closed, sides heaving with every breath. They had survived, but just barely. It was then that help arrived. From the trees, an old farmer named Sam Walker hurried down the embankment, his flashlight beam cutting through the lingering mist. He'd heard the commotion from his farmhouse up the hill, a horse's cry, a distant splash, and his instincts told him something was terribly wrong. Sam was not a man to ignore a cry for help, especially not on a night like this. When he reached the riverbank, Sam froze at the sight before him. There, half buried in mud, was a little girl in a soaked pink dress, clinging to a great brown horse. For a heartbeat, Sam thought he was seeing ghosts. But then Emily's eyes flickered open, and Thunder raised his head, meeting Sam's gaze with silent plea. Sam dropped to his knees, his heart thundering in his chest. "Good Lord, are you all right?" His voice was rough, full of concern. Emily couldn't answer, her lips trembling, her body shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Sam shrugged off his coat, wrapping it around her small frame. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. I've got you." He looked at the horse, recognizing him from the edge of town. Thunder, the Carter family's pride and joy. "You're a hero, boy," Sam whispered, stroking Thunder's muddy neck. Sam scooped Emily into his arms, cradling her close. She clung to his shirt, silent tears soaking through the fabric. Her legs hung limp, her wheelchair lost to the river's depths. But Sam barely noticed. His focus was on the fragile life in his arms. "Let's get you both home," he murmured, voice gentle. Thunder struggled to his feet, following close behind as Sam carried Emily up the hill. The old farmhouse was a beacon in the gray morning, its windows glowing with warm light. Inside, Sam laid Emily on the couch, wrapped her in blankets, and stoked the fire until the room was filled with gentle heat. Thunder pressed his nose to the window, refusing to leave her side. He stood vigil, eyes never leaving the small girl who'd clung to him for life. As Emily drifted in and out of consciousness, Sam cleaned the mud from her face and whispered soothing words. He recognized her immediately. She was the little Carter girl, the one whose face had been all over the news for months, missing after her mother's tragic disappearance. Sam's heart twisted at the thought of what she'd endured. He reached for the phone, dialing the sheriff's number with shaking hands, but paused. Something about Emily's terror, the way she shrank from every loud sound, every sudden movement, told him this was more complicated than anyone realized. Sam decided to wait. For now, the most important thing was keeping Emily safe, letting her know she was not alone. He brought Thunder into the barn, brushing the mud from his coat, whispering thanks for his bravery. "You saved her, old friend. You saved her when no one else could." Thunder nuzzled Sam's shoulder, the bond between horse and girl now forever a part of Sam's story too. Outside, the town buzzed with news of the storm, but no one yet knew the miracle that had taken place by the river. Emily, paralyzed with fear and unable to speak, was safe. For now. Thunder stood watch, a silent guardian, as the world continued on, unaware of the secrets hidden in the farmhouse on the edge of Willow Creek. As the rain finally stopped and the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Emily slept, safe for the first time in what felt like forever. The nightmare wasn't over, not by a long shot, but a miracle had happened in the current, and hope had found a way through the darkness. The farmhouse at Willow Creek was old, built with thick planks that had weathered 100 storms. Morning light crept through gingham curtains, painting the wooden floors in soft stripes of gold. In the small living room, Emily Carter lay cocooned in layers of warm blankets, her tiny body dwarfed by the old leather couch. Her hair was still damp, curls sticking to her cheeks, and her hands never loosened their grip on her faded teddy bear. Thunder, the horse who had saved her life, refused to be separated from her. Sam Walker had never seen loyalty so fierce, not even among the shepherd dogs he'd raised as a young man. Thunder stood at the window, his massive head framed by the glass, eyes locked on Emily as if he understood just how fragile her safety was. Sam moved quietly around the kitchen, brewing strong coffee and heating oatmeal on the stove. Every so often he'd glance over to check on the girl, worry creasing his weathered face. He'd stayed up most of the night, keeping vigil, haunted by images of the river and the terrified child he'd pulled from the mud. His own son had died young, taken by illness in a world that sometimes seemed to care little for the innocent. Maybe that was why Emily's pain struck so deep, her silence, her haunted eyes, the way she flinched from every unexpected sound. Mid-morning brought a gentle knock at the back door. Sam opened it to find Maggie Bennett, his neighbor and oldest friend, carrying a basket of fresh eggs. Her eyes widened when she spotted the little girl on the couch, the horse pacing restlessly just outside. "Lord Sam, what happened here?" Sam's voice was low as he explained, his words stumbling over the details he barely understood himself. "Found her in Thunder by the river at dawn. She's Richard Carter's girl, been missing since last night. Poor child hasn't spoken a word." Maggie's heart broke at the sight of Emily's pale face. She knelt beside the couch, brushing a gentle hand over the girl's curls. "It's all right, honey. You're safe now." Thunder stomped at the window, drawing Emily's eyes. Slowly she reached out, her hand trembling as it found the warm, velvet curve of Thunder's nose. For a moment, nothing else existed. Just the girl, the horse, and the fragile bond forged in the river's fury. Sam saw the look in Emily's eyes and understood something that words could never say. He turned to Maggie, voice rough. "She needs a new wheelchair. Hers is gone, swept away by the river. Think you could help?" Maggie nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. "I know a place in town. I'll see what I can do." The morning passed in a hush. Emily hardly moved, lost in memories she could not share. Thunder lay in the yard, his body pressed close to the window, as if his presence alone could ward off every ghost. Sam sat with her, talking softly about his farm, about the chickens that clucked in the yard, about the world outside her sorrow. He did not expect an answer, and for a long while none came. But healing has its own mysterious rhythm. As sunlight shifted through the room, Emily turned her head and whispered her first word in days. "Thunder." Her voice was barely audible, but Sam heard it clear as a church bell. He caught Maggie's eye, and in that moment hope bloomed. Thunder's ears perked at the sound, and he nudged at the window, eager to be closer. Maggie smiled through tears, brushing Emily's forehead. "That's right, darling. Thunder's here, and he's not going anywhere." For the first time since her world fell apart, Emily let herself believe it might be true. Later that day, as Sam brought fresh soup and coaxed Emily to eat, he found himself telling Maggie the story he never told anyone. About the boy he'd lost, a son who'd loved horses just as fiercely as Emily did. A boy who'd died in the same room where Emily now lay. "I never thought I'd have another child in this house," he admitted, staring at the flames in the wood stove. "Guess fate had other plans." Maggie squeezed his hand, her own eyes shining with old grief. Emily watched their quiet exchange, something shifting deep within her. She was not alone in her sadness. There were other broken hearts here, other souls who knew the weight of loss. Thunder pressed his head to her hand, and for the first time Emily let herself cry. The tears came slow and quiet, soaking into the old blanket as Maggie held her, rocking gently. That evening, Maggie made calls around town, determined to replace Emily's lost wheelchair. The town of Willow Creek was small but kind. By nightfall, word had already begun to spread. Sam Walker was sheltering a lost child, and the community was ready to help. Sam tucked Emily into bed, Thunder still pacing just outside her window. He sat on the edge of the mattress, brushing a lock of hair from her eyes. "You're safe here, kiddo. Nothing bad's gonna happen. Not while I'm around." Emily closed her eyes, the warmth of the fire and the steady beat of Thunder's breath soothing her to sleep. But as Sam watched over her, he knew the story was far from over. Outside, a storm was gathering, not of wind and rain, but of secrets and danger. Richard Carter had not given up, and there were still truths buried deep, waiting to be uncovered. Inside the farmhouse, though, hope flickered. In the heart of Willow Creek, 3 wounded souls, an old farmer, a little girl, and a loyal horse, began the long journey back to life, each healing the others in ways no one else could. And in the stillness of that safe haven, a new kind of family was being forged, one fragile day at a time. The first days at Sam Walker's farmhouse drifted by like a dream that couldn't decide if it wanted to be a nightmare or a fairy tale. Mornings brought a sense of fragile peace. Sunlight filtered through cotton curtains, roosters crowed, and the steady rhythm of chores filled the air. But when night settled and the old house creaked, Emily Carter's eyes would flicker open in terror, haunted by memories she could not voice. Thunder never left her side. By day, he grazed near the kitchen window or dozed in the shade of the porch, always alert, always listening. By night, he pressed close to the wall beneath Emily's window, his breath huffing softly, a living promise that she wasn't alone. Sam and Maggie saw how the bond between girl and horse ran deeper than any words could reach. Thunder was more than a savior. He was a sentinel, carrying burdens even Emily couldn't express. One afternoon, while Sam prepared stew and Maggie sorted through supplies in the living room, Emily sat quietly on the couch, cradling her old teddy bear. Her eyes drifted across the walls, studying the faded photographs of people she'd never met, shelves stacked with horse figurines, and a worn rocking chair by the fire. There was a hush in the air, as if the whole house was waiting. It was then, as Maggie brushed a gentle hand over Emily's tangled hair, that she noticed something odd about the teddy bear. "What's this, honey?" Maggie asked softly, feeling a small bulge stitched beneath the bear's frayed belly. Emily froze, her fingers curling tighter around the toy. Maggie's eyes softened. "I won't hurt it. I promise." She carefully unfastened the loose seam and found a folded scrap of paper tucked deep inside. "Look, Em," she said quietly, holding it out. Emily stared at the note, her lower lip trembling. Sam leaned in, curiosity drawn by Maggie's gentle tone. "What have you got there?" he asked, wiping his hands on his apron. Maggie unfolded the paper, revealing handwriting that shook as if written in fear. Emily's breath caught in her chest as she saw her mother's handwriting. Julia's voice seemed to echo in her mind, as Maggie read the letter aloud. "If you're reading this, Emily, it means I couldn't keep you safe any longer. Your father's greed knows no limits. He'll stop at nothing to get what he wants. Trust no one except Thunder, and the person who helps you find this note. There is a key hidden in your locket. Guard it with your life. When you're old enough, use it. The truth is in the safety deposit box at Willow Creek Bank. Love you always, Mom." For a moment, silence claimed the room. Then quietly, Maggie asked, "Emily, do you have a locket?" Emily nodded, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. With trembling fingers, she unfastened the delicate gold locket that hung around her neck, opening it to reveal a tiny golden key tucked inside, just as her mother had promised. Sam and Maggie exchanged a glance, shock, pity, and determination, all flickering across their faces. Sam crouched down to meet Emily's gaze. "You're very brave, you know that? Your mama wanted you to have this key for a reason." Emily nodded, swallowing hard. She told me to keep it safe. She said Daddy would be angry if he ever found it." Maggie's voice was gentle, but urgent. "Do you remember the night your mama left?" Emily hesitated, staring down at the bear. Her voice was barely a whisper. "There was yelling. I heard her crying. Daddy said she was weak, that she was ruining everything. Then she came to my room and told me to never take off my locket. She hugged me so tight." Emily's voice broke, and she clung to Maggie, sobs racking her small body. Thunder neighed softly outside, as if sensing Emily's pain. Sam reached for the letter again, studying Julia's words. A safety deposit box. Julia must have put something important in there, something that could prove what happened to her. He shook his head, fury simmering beneath the surface. "Richard's got everyone fooled. He's out there, pretending to be the grieving father. But he's a snake. I always knew there was something off about that man." Maggie nodded. "We have to help her. We can't just hide and hope for the best." As the day faded, Maggie busied herself with preparations. She called an old friend at the bank, Susan, a woman she trusted with her own life, and asked careful questions about safety deposit boxes and privacy. Meanwhile, Sam did his best to keep Emily's spirits up, telling stories about his son and showing her the horses in the barn. Thunder stayed close, pressing his head against Emily's shoulder when she was afraid. That night, after Sam and Maggie had tucked Emily in and the house had settled into uneasy silence, the news flickered on the TV in the next room. Richard Carter's face filled the screen, solemn and tearful as he pleaded for information about his missing daughter. His words dripped with false grief, every syllable a performance for the cameras. "If anyone has seen my little Emily, please, please bring her home. She needs her father. I'm lost without her." But behind the carefully controlled mask, Sam saw the calculation in Richard's eyes. Emily watched the screen from behind the door, her breath held tight in her chest. She knew the truth, knew her father wasn't mourning, but hunting. Fear curled inside her, cold and relentless. Sam switched off the TV. "You won't go back to him," he promised, voice low and firm. "Not while I'm breathing." Thunder whickered in agreement outside the window, stomping his foot. The next morning, Maggie pressed a slip of paper into Emily's hand, a hand-drawn map showing the route to Willow Creek Bank. "We'll go soon," she whispered. "But you have to be brave, Em. We're going to find out what your mama wanted you to know." As sunlight warmed the farmhouse and the world outside buzzed with rumors and worry, Emily's mind churned with new questions. What was in the safety deposit box? Would it prove her mother's warnings? Could it protect her from Richard's reach? Thunder nuzzled her, his eyes dark and patient, as if to say, "You're not alone. We'll do this together." And somewhere far away, Richard Carter hired private investigators, sparing no expense to track down his daughter. The hunt was on, but the truth, at last, had a chance to come to light. The gentle rhythm of life at Sam Walker's farmhouse didn't last. Tension began to seep in, thick and unspoken, as word spread through Willow Creek that the Carter girl was missing. Richard Carter's tearful TV appearances only fueled the search. Within days, law enforcement and private investigators, hired by Richard himself, fanned out across the countryside. Flyers with Emily's picture were taped to telephone poles. Her name echoed on every radio station. But no one, not the sheriff, not the townsfolk, not even Richard's own men, knew the dark truth hiding behind Richard's mask. For Sam, Maggie, and Emily, every sunrise brought a new wave of anxiety. The farmhouse, once a sanctuary, felt like it was shrinking with every knock at the door and every unfamiliar car passing down the lane. Sam kept his old hunting rifle propped by the back door, more for comfort than violence. But the gesture said everything. He checked the locks each night, his nerves wound tight as wire. Thunder, ever vigilant, seemed to sense the danger before anyone else. He spent his days pacing the yard, ears twitching, nostrils flaring whenever a stranger's scent drifted on the breeze. Sometimes, in the quiet before dawn, he'd stand at the edge of the barn, his silhouette outlined by the rising sun, watching the distant road for any sign of trouble. Emily drew comfort from Thunder's presence. She'd wheel herself out onto the porch whenever she could, running her fingers through his mane, pressing her cheek to his warm neck. In his calm, steady breathing, she found courage to face another day. Sam and Maggie worked together, building a new routine that revolved around keeping Emily safe and out of sight. Sam repaired an old wheelchair found in the attic, oiling the joints and patching the cushion until it was almost as good as new. Maggie covered the windows with thicker curtains and kept her car gassed up and ready in case they needed to leave in a hurry. "Just a precaution," she said, her voice light, but her eyes never quite lost their shadow. One afternoon, as a police cruiser rolled slowly down the gravel road, Sam's heart nearly stopped. He nodded to Maggie, who whisked Emily into the barn, Thunder close behind. The officer knocked, asked a few polite questions about the missing Carter girl, and left after a quick look around the porch and outbuildings. Sam kept his face calm, but his hands shook long after the cruiser disappeared down the lane. Inside the barn, Emily and Thunder huddled in the farthest stall. Sunlight slanted through the high window, dust swirling in the air. Emily's breathing was shallow, her hands shaking as she clutched Thunder's halter. Thunder nuzzled her gently, as if to say, "Stay strong, I'm here." Maggie stayed by their side, whispering stories and jokes, trying to keep Emily's mind away from fear. That night, after dinner, Sam sat at the kitchen table, the house dim except for the yellow glow of the lamp. Emily wheeled herself in, silent as always, her bear tucked under one arm. Thunder poked his head through the open back door, curious and protective. Maggie poured everyone a cup of cocoa, settling in beside Emily. It was then that Emily, finding courage in the circle of safety around her, spoke. Her voice was quiet but clear. "My mom. She used to say something when things got scary." Maggie leaned forward, listening closely. "What was it, sweetheart?" Emily hesitated, searching for the words. She'd say, "Follow the butterflies." She told me that if I was ever in trouble, I should remember that. She said they would lead me to her, or to safety. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. Sam frowned, thoughtful. "Butterflies. That's not something you forget." Maggie squeezed Emily's hand. It's a clue, maybe. Your mother wanted you to find her, or at least to find the truth. Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. I remember seeing butterflies painted on her old journal, and on a box in her closet. The next day, with the threat of discovery growing closer, Sam and Maggie decided to move Emily and Thunder into the old barn full-time. They converted a corner stall into a makeshift bedroom, lining it with quilts and stringing up a set of fairy lights from Maggie's house. Emily pretended it was an adventure, like camping, but she knew, deep down, that hiding was the only thing keeping her alive. The days blurred together, each one bringing new close calls. Once, Richard's men drove up the lane in a black SUV, their faces hard, their questions sharper than any the police had asked. Sam met them at the gate, his tone polite but unyielding. No, haven't seen her. If I do, I'll call the sheriff. They drove away, but not before casting long, suspicious glances at the barn and the distant silhouette of Thunder in the field. Thunder became their early warning system, his instincts sharper than any alarm. He'd stand stock still, ears cocked, whenever someone approached the property. More than once, Sam and Maggie narrowly avoided discovery thanks to the horse's restless pacing or sudden, urgent snorts. Emily felt safer with Thunder close, her confidence slowly returning with each day she survived. But the sense of safety was always temporary. Every phone call made Sam's stomach clench. Every unfamiliar voice on the wind made Maggie's hands tremble. Emily's nightmares grew more vivid, but she tried not to show her fear. She drew pictures for Sam and Maggie, each one filled with butterflies, horses, and a small girl standing brave against the world. One stormy evening, as rain pelted the roof of the barn, Emily remembered something else. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. If you're lost, follow the butterflies. They'll always take you where you need to go. Emily shared this with Sam as lightning flashed outside. Maybe there's more to it, Sam mused. Maybe your mom left us a trail. We just have to figure out how to follow it. Outside, Thunder stood watch at the barn doors, unflinching as thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, hope flickered alongside fear, a secret code, a horse's loyalty, and the promise that somewhere, butterflies would show the way. Autumn in Willow Creek brought a chill to the air and a blaze of color to the hills. Every year, the town's harvest festival turned Main Street into a celebration. Pumpkin pies, homemade quilts, games for children, and a parade of horses in braided manes. Ordinarily, Emily Carter would have begged her parents to take her, eyes wide with wonder at the lights and music. But this year, she was going as a fugitive, her safety and future riding on the thinnest thread of hope. The festival was Sam and Maggie's chance. With so many people in town, locals and visitors, vendors and costumed kids, it was the only time they could risk sneaking Emily into the bank without drawing attention. They spent the morning getting ready, disguising Emily as best they could. Maggie found a floppy sun hat, oversized sunglasses, and a flowered shawl. Sam dusted off an old wheelchair and wrapped a plaid blanket around Emily's legs. Her heart pounded, but she nodded bravely, clutching her teddy bear and the gold locket beneath her shirt. Thunder watched anxiously from the pasture, his ears pricked at every strange sound from the farmhouse. He sensed the tension in the air, the quickened steps, the way Emily squeezed his mane before leaving. Maggie bent and kissed Thunder's forehead. Take care of us, boy. If anything goes wrong, you raise the alarm. Thunder nickered softly, pressing his nose to Emily's hand as she whispered, Don't worry, I'll be back. The drive into town was tense, Maggie's knuckles white on the steering wheel. Sam rode in the back beside Emily, murmuring words of comfort, his eyes never resting for long. At the edge of Main Street, the festival burst into view. Laughter, the scent of caramel apples, banners fluttering in the crisp breeze. No one noticed the small girl in sunglasses as Maggie wheeled her down the sidewalk, slipping through the crowds toward the bank. Inside, the air was cooler and quieter, the hum of the festival muffled by thick glass doors. Sam greeted Susan, the teller Maggie trusted most. Susan's eyes flickered with recognition and concern, but she hid it behind a practiced smile. "Good morning, folks. How can I help you today?" Maggie leaned in, voice low. "We need to access a safety deposit box. Julia Carter's, her daughter is here." She squeezed Emily's hand. "It's urgent, Susan, please." Susan nodded, glancing quickly around before ushering them into the back. "I'll take you to the vault. But hurry, there are police all over Main Street today. I heard Richard Carter's in town." The vault's cool air smelled of steel and secrets. Emily's hands shook as she pressed the small gold key into the lock, turning it with a soft click. Sam opened the box, pulling out a stack of documents, a faded photograph, and a folded map painted with blue butterflies. Maggie scanned the papers, heart thumping. "These are bank statements, legal forms. Look, Sam, it's proof. Richard's been siphoning money from Julia's accounts, hiding it offshore, and... What's this?" She unfolded a letter, Julia's handwriting leaping from the page. "If anything happens to me, the answer is at the House of Butterflies. Protect Emily. Tell the truth." Emily touched the map, tracing the blue butterflies with her finger. "That's what Mom meant. Follow the butterflies." Her voice was stronger now, hope flickering in her chest. Sam's breath caught. "Julia's alive. Or she was when she wrote this." Maggie nodded. "The House of Butterflies. It's the cottage out by the old meadow. Julia loved that place. She always said it felt like a secret garden." Susan hurried them along, warning, "You need to go now. Richard's been asking questions all morning. If he sees Emily..." At that moment, chaos erupted outside. Thunder, waiting tied to a lamppost beside the parade route, saw a familiar black SUV crawl down Main Street. He recognized Richard's scent, his voice. The hair along Thunder's back bristled. Without warning, he reared back, snapping his lead. The crowd shrieked as Thunder galloped through the parade, scattering hay bales and sending children squealing with laughter and alarm. For a moment, all eyes were on the wild horse racing down the street. Inside the bank, Susan pressed the documents and map into Sam's hands. "Go, now!" Sam scooped up Emily, and Maggie rushed them out the back, hearts hammering. The commotion outside bought them precious seconds. They hurried to the alley, Sam carrying Emily as Maggie led the way. Thunder circled back, finding them in the alley and nudging Emily's shoulder, relieved and anxious. The four of them squeezed into Maggie's car, Thunder barely fitting in the open trailer. As they sped out of town, Emily glanced back to see Richard standing in the crowd, face twisted in confusion and rage. The evidence was safe for now, but the net was closing in. Emily clutched her teddy bear and the butterfly map, her heart wild with a mix of fear and hope. As the festival continued behind them, music blaring, rides spinning, laughter ringing through the air, the group raced toward the House of Butterflies, each turn of the wheels carrying them closer to the truth Julia had hidden, and the safety Emily so desperately needed. In the quiet after the chase, Sam squeezed Emily's shoulder. "You did great, kiddo. We've almost got everything we need to stop him." Emily nodded, the locket warm against her chest. "We have to find my mom," she whispered. Thunder nickered softly, pressing his muzzle to her cheek. Maggie wiped away a tear, determination hardening her features. "We will, sweetheart. We will." Outside, fields rolled past in a blur of gold and green, the last colors of autumn fading as they followed the trail of blue butterflies to a place where answers and danger waited. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time since that terrible night, Emily felt hope rising inside her, shining even in the growing shadows. Night pressed down heavy and thick as the car sped away from the harvest festival, tires spitting gravel behind them. In the rearview mirror, the lights of Willow Creek faded into a scattered constellation. Emily huddled in the back seat between her teddy bear and the battered butterfly map, her hands clenched tight. Thunder's silhouette filled the trailer, his eyes glinting with an alertness that never wavered, muscles coiled, every nerve attuned to Emily's safety. Maggie drove faster than she ever had, her jaw set, heart pounding. Beside her, Sam flipped through the documents from the bank, scanning Julia's letter and the records proving Richard's fraud. "It's all here, Maggie. Enough to ruin him. Maybe even put him away forever." Maggie nodded, her eyes locked on the dark road, headlights slashing through the shadows. "We just have to make it to the cottage. Once we find Julia, if she's really there, we take this straight to the feds." Emily shivered, her breath fogging the glass as she pressed her face to the window. Outside, the world raced by, a blur of fields, fence lines, and moonlit barns. Her thoughts spun in circles. Will we find Mom? Will he catch us? Each time the car hit a bump, she jumped, heart hammering. Thunder, sensing her fear even from the trailer, let out a low, reassuring nicker. Emily whispered, "Almost there, Thunder. Just a little longer." Back in town, Richard Carter's rage was volcanic. He'd watched the parade unravel, the wild brown horse tearing down Main Street, scattering crowds, and somehow, he'd glimpsed his daughter's small figure ducking through the alley with two strangers. The sight shattered his carefully built story. He wasted no time, storming to his SUV and barking orders into his phone. "She's here! I saw her! Find her! Search every back road out of town! And if you see the horse, don't let it get away." His men, already on edge, spread out with renewed determination. Sirens split the quiet of the night as police and private security joined the hunt. Sam, Maggie, Emily, and Thunder flew down the winding country roads, headlights bouncing in the darkness. Sam studied the butterfly map by flashlight, tracing the route with a shaking finger. "Left at the old mill, then right by the oak tree. Julia said the cottage would be hidden, surrounded by blue butterflies. Look for the stone marker, Maggie." Maggie's eyes darted from the road to the shadows just beyond the reach of the beams. Every oncoming car made her pulse race. Behind them, the chase intensified. Red and blue lights flickered in the distance. Richard's SUV closed the gap, roaring like some dark beast let loose. Emily's fear grew raw and electric, her knuckles white as she gripped her bear. Sam reached back, laying a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You're safe, Emily. No matter what happens, we're with you." Thunder, running beside the car as they slowed near the woods, was all instinct and loyalty. He matched the car's speed, nostrils flaring, hooves pounding the hard-packed dirt. When Maggie turned off the headlights and coasted down a narrow, rutted track, Thunder kept pace, his brown coat almost invisible in the moonlight. Suddenly, at a crossroads, Richard's SUV surged out of the darkness, high beams blazing. Maggie swerved, heart leaping into her throat. "Hang on!" The car jolted across a ditch, branches scratching the sides. Sam yelled, "There, look!" Ahead, a low stone marker stood by a break in the trees. Painted on its face, barely visible, were dozens of blue butterflies. "This is it!" Maggie shouted. She spun the wheel, veering down a hidden path. The car bumped and rocked, headlights dancing across tangled undergrowth. Thunder thundered after them, a force of nature never faltering. Behind them, Richard's men skidded to a halt at the crossroads, engines revving, searchlights probing the trees. Richard screamed in frustration, punching the dashboard. "They're close! Fan out! Search the woods!" Sirens grew distant as the group plunged deeper into the forest. Moonlight filtered through branches overhead. At the end of the trail, a small cottage stood, overgrown with ivy, its porch wrapped in silence. But around it, hundreds of blue butterflies danced in the air, their wings shimmering like stained glass in the silver light. Emily's breath caught, her mother's safe haven. Maggie killed the engine, and Sam helped Emily from the car, thunder pressing close, breath warm against her cheek. "Stay low," Sam whispered, leading them through the tall grass. They crept to the porch, Maggie's hands shaking as she knocked softly on the weathered door. Inside, lights flickered on. The door creaked open, and a woman's face appeared. Tired, older, but unmistakably Julia Carter. Her gasp split the quiet as she took in Emily, Sam, Maggie, and the horse standing guard at her side. "Emily, my baby!" Julia rushed forward, tears streaming as she swept Emily into her arms. For a moment, time stood still, mother and daughter clinging together. The nightmare of the past months melting away in the warmth of that embrace. Thunder, standing sentry, eyed the darkness behind them, ever alert. Julia ushered them all inside, bolting the door as Sam handed over the documents. "We have everything, Julia. The proof, the map, even Emily's locket. But Richard is right behind us." Julia wiped her tears, resolve hardening in her features. "Let him come. It's over now, I'm done running." As they settled into the cottage, the sound of engines grew louder. Richard's voice echoed outside, furious and desperate. "Emily? Julia! Come out now!" Police sirens wailed closer, drawn by the chase, uncertain whose side they were on. Sam handed the evidence to Julia, who called Maggie's friend at the FBI, reciting every detail, every threat, every lie. Thunder stood at the window, muscles taut, ready to defend his family. Outside, the blue butterflies swirled in the moonlight, a living shield. Inside, old wounds ached, but hope surged anew. Emily clung to her mother, whispering, "We found you. We really found you." Sam and Maggie exchanged tired, grateful smiles. For the first time, it felt like the end was near. A reckoning, a rescue, a hope no darkness could smother. And as dawn threatened the horizon, the family braced for the final confrontation, courage lighting the shadows as the chase through the night drew to its close. The cottage at the edge of the wild meadow had never felt more alive. Blue butterflies drifted through the cool morning air, their wings catching the pale sunlight and painting flecks of hope onto everything they touched. Inside, Emily clung to her mother, the warmth of Julia's arms melting away months of fear, pain, and loneliness. Thunder stood at the threshold, massive and unmoving, his eyes fixed on the world beyond the front door, as if daring trouble to step any closer. Julia's hands trembled as she stroked Emily's hair, her voice breaking. "I thought I'd lost you forever. I prayed every night you were safe, that someone would keep you from—" She stopped, breath hitching, unwilling to say Richard's name. Emily pressed her cheek to Julia's chest, her own tears silent, the ache in her heart easing with every second she remained in her mother's embrace. Sam and Maggie watched the reunion from the corner of the living room, emotion heavy in the air. Maggie blinked away tears, her hand finding Sam's. "They found each other," she whispered. "After everything." Sam squeezed her fingers gently, his own voice gruff. "It ain't over yet, Mags. Not till that man's put away for good." Julia turned to them, her resolve hardening. "What you did for my daughter, what you risked, I'll never forget it. But now we have to end this. We have the truth, and I won't let Richard hurt her or anyone else ever again. She opened the folder Sam handed her, spreading the bank documents, forged signatures, and evidence of Richard's crimes across the old dining table. Suddenly, the outside world crashed back in, a screech of tires on gravel, angry voices, the slap of car doors. Thunder's ears snapped forward. He moved to the front window, nostrils flaring, body tense as a drawn bowstring. Julia went still, then squared her shoulders. "It's time!" Richard's voice echoed across the meadow, raw and furious. "Julia, I know you're in there! Hand over my daughter, and no one gets hurt!" Police officers, caught between Richard's story and the rising swirl of accusations, formed a loose line at the edge of the yard, watching for a cue. Inside, Maggie picked up the phone and dialed Susan's FBI contact, her voice low and urgent. "We're at the cottage. Yes, the House of Butterflies. We have Emily and her mother, and all the proof you need. Richard Carter is here now, armed and dangerous." She gave the address, her hands shaking but her words steady. Julia drew Emily behind her and faced the door as it shook under Richard's fists. Sam positioned himself by the window, rifle in hand, though he prayed he wouldn't have to use it. Thunder pawed the floor, an immovable guardian. Richard's face appeared in the glass, twisted with desperation and rage. "Julia, you don't know what you're doing. You're sick. She's my daughter. You can't keep her from me." His words fell flat. Even the police looked uneasy. Julia flung open the door, holding her ground. "Emily is my daughter, and you tried to kill her. We have proof of the fraud, the threats, and everything you did to us. It's over, Richard. The truth is coming out." For a moment, the world held its breath. Richard lunged forward, but Thunder charged, rearing up with a furious whinny that sent Richard stumbling backward into the arms of two officers. Sam's rifle lowered as federal agents, summoned by Maggie's call and Susan's tip, poured into the clearing. Badges flashed, commands were shouted, and in the commotion, Richard was handcuffed, his rights read to him as his empire crumbled. Emily watched from behind her mother, shaking but unbroken. She pressed her hand to Thunder's warm flank, drawing courage from the horse who'd been her lifeline in the darkest hours. Julia hugged her tight, tears streaming freely now, not from fear but relief. As officers took statements and cataloged the evidence, Julia sat with Emily on the porch, the gentle flutter of butterflies overhead, a stark contrast to the chaos just past. Thunder nuzzled Emily's shoulder, his eyes calm for the first time in days. Inside, Maggie and Sam spoke quietly with the agents, piecing together the tangled web Richard had woven. With each new revelation, the case against him grew stronger. Embezzlement, attempted murder, falsified records, and years of calculated abuse. But for Emily and Julia, the world had narrowed to this one moment, a mother and daughter, battered but together, watching as justice at last bent in their favor. Julia brushed the hair from Emily's face, her voice trembling. "You're so strong, Emily. You held on when everything was falling apart. I'm so proud of you." Emily looked up, her voice small but sure. "You told me to follow the butterflies. They brought me back to you." Julia smiled through tears. "You followed them all the way home." Thunder stood with them, the very picture of loyalty, his coat shining in the late morning sun. Julia pulled him close, stroking his powerful neck. "And you, Thunder, you saved my daughter's life. You're family now, always." The crowd outside began to disperse as agents loaded Richard into a squad car, his protests fading into the distance. Reporters gathered at the end of the drive, cameras flashing, but Sam stood tall, keeping them at bay. "No more running," he said softly to Maggie. "This family's got a chance to heal now." Julia called the officers and the community together on the porch, her voice carrying over the hum of voices and the fluttering of butterfly wings. The truth matters. Love matters. And for every child or animal in danger, there's hope if someone stands up. Thank you, all of you, for standing up when it counted. Applause rose from the small crowd. Emily leaned into her mother, her world finally safe, her heart mending in the light of day. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm gold over the house of butterflies, Emily, Julia, Sam, Maggie, and Thunder sat side by side, bound not just by survival, but by the truth they'd fought to reveal. And as the blue butterflies danced above the porch, their fragile wings caught the promise of a new beginning. Weeks drifted by, and the house of butterflies slowly transformed from a battered refuge to a sanctuary blooming with hope. Sunlight filtered through the windows every morning, painting the cottage in gentle gold. The wounds of the past lingered. Nightmares still gripped Emily some nights, and Julia sometimes paused mid-sentence, lost in the maze of memory. But each day, the air felt lighter, and laughter found its way back into the rooms. Emily's recovery was both physical and emotional. With the help of doctors and the support of Maggie and Sam, she began to regain some strength in her hands, learning how to grip her spoon again, how to hold a paintbrush. Physical therapy was a long road, and there were days when frustration bubbled up inside her. But she never felt alone, not anymore. Whenever she felt the edge of despair, Thunder was always nearby, standing sentinel at her window or gently nudging her shoulder until she smiled again. Thunder became more than just a symbol of rescue. He was her anchor in the world. Every evening, as the sky faded to soft lavender, Emily would wheel herself out to the porch and rest her hand on Thunder's neck. He stood still and patient, his great brown eyes fixed on her as if he understood every secret ache in her heart. Sometimes she spoke to him, sharing her fears about the river, about her father, about all the things she still couldn't understand. Thunder never answered, but his quiet strength was enough. Julia also found herself healing in the rhythm of daily life. She spent hours tending the gardens, planting wildflowers for the butterflies and vegetables for the kitchen. She and Maggie cooked together, sharing recipes and memories, often dissolving into laughter that bounced from the stone walls. Some days Julia would sit with Sam beneath the old oak, the two of them speaking quietly about their lost loved ones, honoring the pain and finding solace in each other's company. Yet even in peace, the shadows lingered. Emily's nightmares came in flashes: dark water, the thunder of her father's voice, the cold grip of the river. Sometimes she woke in the night, her breath ragged, calling out for her mother or clutching her bare to her chest. But each time Julia was there holding her, whispering gentle promises that nothing bad would happen again. Thunder would nuzzle the blankets, standing guard until sleep returned. The townspeople, once uncertain what to believe, soon rallied behind Emily and Julia. Their story traveled from porch to porch, and it wasn't long before neighbors came bearing gifts: books, warm pies, flowers, and cards from children who'd seen Emily on TV. The sheriff himself came by, offering an apology for not seeing the truth sooner, and promising to protect them always. What had begun as whispers of scandal grew into a community's determination to lift up the most vulnerable among them. One golden afternoon, Julia, Sam, and Maggie sat together in the garden while Emily played with a group of children from town, some shy, some boisterous, all drawn to Thunder and his gentle ways. Julia's eyes shimmered as she watched her daughter, her voice soft and reflective. "You know, I used to think family was just about blood. But the truth is, It's about who stands with you when the world is at its darkest. Maggie nodded, squeezing her friend's hand. That's what we've all learned, isn't it? That sometimes strangers can become your strongest support. Sam, who'd lost so much and found healing in this unlikely family, added, "Animals, they have a way of seeing straight through to your soul. Thunder saved Emily, but he saved a part of all of us too." Julia smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. Healing is slow. It's not just about the scars you can see. It's the ones inside that take the longest. But with each other, we get a little stronger every day. That evening, as twilight settled in and fireflies danced with the butterflies, Julia gathered everyone on the porch. She held Emily's hand, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I've been thinking about what comes next, not just for us, but for anyone who needs a place to start over. This cottage, it kept us safe. Maybe now it can do the same for others. I want to turn the House of Butterflies into a sanctuary for children and animals in need. A place where healing isn't just a word. It's something you feel in every corner." Emily's eyes lit up, hope shining through her smile. "We could help so many people, Mama. No one would have to be afraid or alone again." Maggie grinned, already brainstorming ways to get the townsfolk involved. "We'll need volunteers, donations, maybe a bigger barn for more animals. I know plenty of folks who'd pitch in." Sam's eyes sparkled, his old sorrow transformed into purpose. "And I'll teach every kid who comes through here how to ride. Maybe we'll find another Thunder in the making." As word spread, the cottage became a beacon of new beginnings. Children arrived, some limping, some silent with old hurts, all welcomed with open arms. Thunder took to his new role as guardian with pride, gentle with every child and animal that crossed the threshold. Emily helped wherever she could, her own experience making her the perfect friend to those struggling with fear and uncertainty. The lessons learned at the House of Butterflies ran deep and true. True family is not just blood, but the people who stand by you when you are weakest. The loyalty and bravery of animals can carry you through your darkest moments. Healing is not instant. Every scar, visible or hidden, tells a story of survival and hope. Compassion from strangers can lay the foundation for a whole new life. And sometimes, the smallest and most fragile among us, the children, the wounded animals, turn out to have the greatest strength of all. On the last night of summer, Emily and Julia sat together beneath the stars, Thunder's warm presence a comfort at their side. "You did it, Emily," Julia whispered. "You turned pain into something beautiful. You gave all of us a second chance." Emily smiled, her heart full, as blue butterflies drifted overhead, a silent promise that hope, once found, never truly leaves. A year had passed since the day the truth emerged at the House of Butterflies, but in Willow Creek, the memory felt as fresh as the blue morning sky. The town had changed, quietly but unmistakably. The Carter scandal had left its mark, but what lingered longer was the story of courage and survival, a story that belonged to Emily, Julia, Thunder, Sam, Maggie, and the community that refused to look away. This year, the Harvest Festival returned brighter than ever. Main Street bustled with laughter and music, the scent of popcorn and apple cider drifting on the breeze. Booths lined the sidewalks, painted butterflies fluttered from every lamppost, and children darted through the crowds in sparkling face paint. The festival's theme, miracles and second chances, was everywhere, on banners, in speeches, and most especially, in the hearts of those gathered. For Emily, the day had dawned with nervous excitement. In her room at the House of Butterflies, she could hear the morning bustle outside. Julia laughing with volunteers, Sam saddling Thunder, and Maggie rehearsing the program for the day. Emily's heart beat fast, but not with fear. Today she would do something she once thought impossible. With Julia's help, Emily dressed in a crisp blue dress. Her wheelchair gleamed, freshly polished and decorated with painted butterflies, gifts from other children who now called the sanctuary home. Thunder waited outside, his coat brushed to a golden shine, a crown of blue ribbons braided into his black mane. As Julia lifted Emily from the chair to Thunder's broad back, the crowd at the gate erupted in applause. It was the first time Emily would ride Thunder alone since that terrible night, and the entire town had come to witness the miracle. Sam and Maggie watched from the sidelines, beaming with pride. Children lined up behind Emily, each waiting for their turn to join the parade, some on horses, others leading ponies or holding hands with new friends. Volunteers bustled about, making sure everyone felt included, no matter their abilities or scars. As the parade began, Emily sat tall on Thunder, her eyes bright with joy and a trace of awe. Thunder moved with gentle assurance, his steps slow and steady. The town's mayor led the procession, followed by Sam and the sanctuary volunteers. Julia walked beside Thunder, her hand never far from Emily's. Cheers and clapping rang out as they wound through Main Street, the crowd chanting, "Miracles! Second chances!" When the parade ended in the town square, Julia helped Emily down. Thunder nuzzled her, his warm breath a reminder of the day they saved each other. Emily wrapped her arms around his neck, whispering, "You're my miracle." Thunder stood still as a statue, letting her hold on as long as she needed. On the festival stage, Julia took the microphone. The crowd fell silent, every eye fixed on the woman who had fought so hard and lost so much, yet still found the strength to give hope to others. "Thank you," Julia began, her voice strong and clear, echoing across the square. "When we first came to Willow Creek, my daughter and I were broken, afraid, alone, unsure if we would ever heal. But this town gave us more than safety. You gave us a family." She paused, emotion rising in her throat. The House of Butterflies began as a place of hiding, but thanks to your kindness and courage, it has become a place of healing for so many. Children, animals, families, people who needed a second chance. Today, we celebrate not just the miracles that saved us, but the community that made those miracles possible. Sam joined her on stage, sharing how the sanctuary had helped him find purpose after loss. Maggie spoke about the power of community, and children from the House of Butterflies shared their dreams. Dreams that now felt possible. Laughter and tears blended in the sunshine as blue butterflies, released from their baskets, fluttered above the square, a living symbol of hope set free. The festival's closing ceremony featured the children's horseback procession. Emily led the group, her face shining with pride as she and Thunder circled the square, blue butterflies swirling overhead. Other children followed on ponies, some walking hand in hand, others waving homemade banners that read, "Never give up," and "Family is chosen." The whole town clapped and cheered, swept up in a wave of shared happiness and pride. After the parade, Emily and Julia returned to the sanctuary, surrounded by new friends and family. The House of Butterflies had grown into a true haven, filled with laughter and love. Sam taught riding lessons to every child who wished to learn, and Maggie organized art classes in the garden, encouraging children to paint their hopes on every stone and wall. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned gold, Julia gathered everyone outside. She stood beneath the oak, blue butterflies drifting in the warm light, and addressed the group one last time. "If you see a soul in danger or in pain, stand with them. Every act of courage and kindness makes a difference. It only takes one moment to change a life. Thank you, Willow Creek, for standing with us. The crowd applauded. Some moved to tears. Emily rolled forward, thunder at her side, and looked out over the faces of friends, family, and strangers who had become something more. She felt the fullness of her journey, the fear, the struggle, the rescue, and, most of all, the love that had carried her through it all. Julia knelt beside Emily, smiling as they watched the blue butterflies take flight above the meadow, swirling together in the twilight. Thunder lowered his head, nuzzling both mother and daughter. In that golden moment, surrounded by hope, Emily knew they had not just survived. They had created something lasting and beautiful. The legend of Thunder, the miracle horse, would be told for generations. But more important than any story was the truth at the heart of it all. Love, courage, and community could defeat even the deepest betrayals. Healing required time, trust, and the bravery to keep moving forward, even after unspeakable hurt. Loyalty, whether human or animal, had the power to save lives and create families where none existed before. As night fell and the last of the butterflies disappeared into the dark, Emily, Julia, Thunder, and the people of Willow Creek stood together, a living testament that, no matter how hard the journey, there could always be new beginnings and second chances.